I get started, what an event. Thank you so much, Amy, for putting this on today. Can I get a round of applause, please, for Amy? She's done such a great job. I know it all just looks seamless and it all just happens, but there's a huge amount of work that went in behind it, and really incredible to see what you've achieved. So thank you for that. While in danger of going for another round of applause, I just want to say how much I'm enjoying being in Utah. It's just so lovely to be here, and just hearing, I've heard a lot of people being evangelized about Utah for a long time, and to be here and spend time with you all is really special. Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about the 2025 B2B benchmark report, and also we recently launched what we call our missing chapter, which is all around qualification, and I'm going to share some of the insights from the report for everybody here to see. So let me start with a show of hands. Who's seen this report before? Has anyone downloaded it, seen it, reviewed it? I've got a few nods, some hands up in the air. There we go. Okay, good. All right, well, let me start by just introducing the report. There we go. Okay, so to create this report, we analysed over 650,000 opportunities, representing nearly $48 billion worth of pipeline. We also, for the very first time this year, we interviewed over 2,000 revenue leaders as well to get their input to the report. It was also the first year that we covered the whole customer life cycle. So you're going to see insights in the report that cover not just sales, but also customer success as well, and some really interesting insights on that side. At least from my perspective, I found it really fascinating. So let's start with the headlines. What we saw in the data, you can see here on the screen, while win rates have dropped slightly versus last year, actually it feels like we've bottomed out. And some of the biggest takeaway from the report for me was that we saw that average deal values has jumped up dramatically. We've all focused on much larger opportunities. I think we saw safety in some of the larger deals. But on the second line here, what you'll see is that over 3/4 of sellers missed quota in the last 12 months. And that's just simply not sustainable. Okay, so 12 months ago, I was talking about how do we get the B and C players to be more like the A players. Now, more often than not, I'm talking about how do we get rid of the B and C players if they're not able to step up. And I think we've got a role to play in that as leaders. We've got an opportunity to actually support our sales teams and help them to become a lot more consistent in the way they operate. The data point that I want to dive into a little bit more on this, though, is the sales velocity delta point. This idea of an 11x delta between our top performing sellers and our average salespeople. We've never seen that number so high. And when we look at the data behind it, a lot of times I get asked, we spend a lot of time talking about sales velocity, and people always want to understand, where did that data point come from? How do I calculate my own sales velocity? And you might want to do this for each of your different go-to-market motions. And there's a couple of data points here that you'd expect. So, top sellers are, their average, their sales cycles are shorter. Well, we'd expect that. And we can see that their win rates are higher as well. But for me, some of the interesting data points here is that they're able to manage nearly 3 times more deals than the rest of our sellers. Sorry?
Siri, that was AI.
Okay. Welcome AI. And average deal values are much, much higher, and their win rates are clearly higher as well. But the momentum they're able to achieve through the sales cycle is really key. They're able to close their sales process. They're able to keep that momentum going much, much more than the average sellers. In fact, we see the average sellers holding on to deals for far too long, and we talk about that a lot. I also thought it would be helpful to have a look at the data points across the whole funnel, or the bow tie, as some of us refer to. And there's some interesting data points here as well. We're spending, last year we saw pretty much everyone miss quota. At least most businesses just didn't hit their numbers. So what did we do about it this year? Did we decide to invest in our people, get a lot more focused on aligning our go-to-market teams, do a lot more training on that as well? Or did we just spend more money on marketing? Well, well, there is that. But I'm not going to comment on that. I don't qualify. You can tell from my accent. But we saw a lot more money being spent on marketing, so a lot more leads were being generated at top of funnel. And one of the other really positive data points here is we saw a lot more alignment between sales and marketing. And you can see that in the MQL versus SQL conversion rates. So there are some positive statements and data points in the funnel as we go through it. However, the harsh reality is that just 14% of sellers are now responsible for 80% of our new logo revenue. And that's an insane number. We've never seen that delta so wide. Okay, and you can see, I'm not going to go through each of these data points here. You're welcome there's a QR code at the end. If you miss one of these slides, you can download the whole report for free. But you can see there's lots of data points here as to what we're seeing is frustrating as CROs. And what is it that top performers are doing differently across the whole sales cycle? And they are just different animals to the rest of our sales teams. So how do we unlock profitable, efficient growth? Okay, what is it that we can do now to dive into getting everyone working in a much more consistent fashion? And I wanted to pull up this data point from the report because it really hit me hard. I know certainly in our organization, the loudest voices are very much the sales team. And they tend to get paid the most. They get most of the budget thrown at them because they shout louder. They've got spikier hair than everybody else, bigger ties. We still wear ties in London. But actually what we saw last year is that over 50%, 52% of revenue, 52% of new revenue last year didn't come from new logos. It came from existing accounts. And if you're not doubling down, in fact, I'd argue all of us could spend more time and energy on working out how we can generate more revenue and sell more product to our existing customers. And we saw that in the report. It's so much easier, so much faster to get through to existing accounts that way. One of the other really interesting data points for me was this huge transition from individuals being individual subject matter experts or single-purpose vehicles responsible for a teeny part of the sales cycle and handing over to the next and handing over to the next. And we saw 46% of companies now expect sellers to be full cycle. And in my opinion, when I present this next year, I think that number is going to be higher. And so we're finding that the sellers aren't necessarily exclusively responsible for generating pipe, but they are certainly expected to generate some of their own pipeline themselves. And more now, the seller is responsible for keeping hold of that customer after they finish the sales process. And you might decide to hold on to the customer for 3, 6, 9, 12 months. But what that does is it drives some interesting behavior. Suddenly the seller doesn't have to get the whole deal over the line in the first contract, because that's the only one they're getting paid on. And we spend a lot of time thinking about this from our perspective, from the process that we hold in go-to-market. But really, what we should be focusing much more on is the customer journey. And the customer gets such a better experience when they have one person managing them through that whole customer journey. So it benefits us because we close deals faster, because we don't necessarily have to win the whole deal out the box. We can land and expand. The seller gets to have hold that relationship for much longer, and most importantly, the customer gets a better experience. So yeah, I think this number is going to increase as we move forward. Now, we also need to understand, we all understand and recognize the fact that relationships drive revenue in our businesses, okay? But knowing which relationships is absolutely key. And you can see here once again that the win rate on opportunities being opened for existing accounts on the renewal, for example, for an upsell or a cross-sell or an expansion opportunity is now at 45%. Now, I want to dive into that in a little bit more information. So we looked at this in quite a lot of detail, and what we found is if the last 2 QBRs that you've done with your customer are with the C-suite, you are 7 times more likely to open up a cross-sell, upsell opportunity with a 45% win rate. But if the last 2 QBRs before the renewal are done below the C-level, you're 4 times more likely to churn the customer. So you need to start thinking about how you're running those QBRs. They need to be strategic sessions. Earlier in the CEO community, we talked about a new product we've launched we call RIAS, which is Revenue Insights as a Service. Now, all of our insights are in our product, but we developed a new product to take those insights and deliver them back to the C-suite in a consultative way in the QBRs. And in every single customer we've done that for, every QBR, more C-suite turn up, because it's a strategic session, because it's not about how the buttons are working. And so take this as an opportunity to work out how can you add value to the C-suite so they want to turn up at your QBRs. Because if you can get that buy-in from them, you're much more likely to have them bought in to a renewal, but also the expansion opportunity. Okay, so I mentioned before this idea that relationships drive revenue, and this is vital not just in the sales process, but ongoing in success. So if you can continue to touch your customers during the entire customer lifecycle, you're much more likely not only to win the customer in the first place, but also to expand the opportunity. And we know that ongoing engagement, so it's not about just engaging 6 weeks before the renewal. If you've built those relationships, then when things go wrong, you can lean into them. And if you've built those relationships, when you've got something new to sell them, they'll want to hear about it. So relationships are absolutely key. And in a world of AI and all these other tools and technology that's out there, we need to be finding ways of getting our sellers spending more time with our customers, getting back to basics. Relationships really do drive revenue. One of the other really interesting data points for me when I looked at the way that top performers are operating versus the average performers is the volume of time they're spending with customers. And it's astounding that we're allowing sellers to spend less than 2 hours a day talking to our customers. And what the hell else are they doing? Okay, they're spending so much time getting distracted. And we're allowing our sellers to get involved in marketing discussions and getting involved in AI discussions and getting involved in all sorts of ideas about where we might go as a business. When what we really need them to do is what they're really good at, which is build relationships, build trust, and sell. Okay? So I want you to be thinking about monitoring the volume of time they're spending customer-facing. I'm not talking about just sending emails. I'm talking about actually engaging and building relationships with your customer. It makes such a big difference. And top performers know it, and they feel it, and you can see it in their data. It's not a surprise that those that engage more with customers generate more revenue. Slippage is kills sales processes. We know that time kills all deals. Now, top performers are much more likely to disqualify out their non-ICP opportunities. And as leaders, what we need to be doing is encouraging our sellers to get rid of those opportunities that aren't real. It's so important to qualify out much more than they're doing at the moment. I promise you, the majority of your sellers are not qualifying out as much as they should. And the opportunity cost of that is huge. It's not just the time that, okay, that deal didn't close, but because we were working on those opportunities, we weren't working on something more productive. So understanding your pipeline, understanding ICP, being ruthless about that qualification. The top performers understand it. They've got it in their blood. They'll work on the deals that they know are going to close. And if it's not that opportunity, they give the customer an out. It sounds like you've got other priorities right now. Tell me about the other 7 projects you're working on. It sounds like what we'd do for you isn't a priority right now. Maybe we should come back to you after in the summer. Let's help our sellers to only work on opportunities that are highly qualified. And you can see it in the data. It flushes through. The other thing that happens is they allow the sellers to get, the lower performers are allowing the opportunity to go through to the later stages. They're pulling in resources from across our organizations. We've got solution engineers, legal, finance, all getting involved in a sales cycle that's not even real. And that slippage is killing our organizations. The amount of energy we're putting into those deals that don't close is absolutely killing us. We know that 3/4 of our deals, half of our deals close without any decision at all, and half of the balance close lost. So 3/4 of the opportunities in general that we work on don't lead to revenue, okay? And the deals that the deals that close lost spend twice as long in pipeline as deals that close won. So in reality, our sellers are spending an average of 15% of their time on deals that generate revenue. And it's just so inefficient. It's why I decided this was the market I wanted to work in. Because my goodness, you go into a mature market and you show them how you can generate a few % increase in productivity, they'll bite your hand off. We're going into sales organizations and talking about transformation, about doubling or tripling the productivity of these salespeople. And even there, they question whether it can be done. So there's so much opportunity if you drive it by the data, if you understand where, and really get people focused on ICP. Sounds boring, and we've all heard it 100 times before, but qualify, qualify, qualify. Top performers understand how to qualify better than everybody else. And qualification isn't a one and done exercise. It's something that should continue throughout the customer journey, not just up to the sales process as well. Our success teams should continue to qualify the customer's requirements ongoing after the deals are signed, because they change. And if we understand their requirements, we can help support them better. But you can see here there's a material gap between the qualification that the top performers are doing and what the rest of the sales team are doing. And we see just a third of opportunities leave discovery with proper structured scores on the discovery and notes on the qualification. Only a third. So 2/3 of deals are leaving discovery without the notes and the qualification being done correctly. Okay, so talking about qualification, we've just launched as I said, the missing chapter around qualification, and this is the first time I've presented the content from that report. So I'm going to share a few slides that we've got around qualification. No surprise here, but that well-qualified deals win more often. And we're so excited about getting out of that discovery phase. We've got a customer, they've got a budget. We're going to crack on through that sales process. And we allow ourselves to skip out of that discovery phase onto the next stage of the sales cycle. We start bringing in other resources into the process. And we don't realize it's a closed-loss deal until later. One of the things we do when we onboard a customer is we go back through the last 12 months worth of Gong call recordings or Zoom call recordings, whatever you're using. And we then we analyze how well they were qualified and then compare that to what the outcome was. And what's really interesting is you see all of these late-stage deals closing lost, and we think we've got a late-stage problem. But in reality, when we look at the data, it's not a late-stage problem. It's a qualification problem. 9 out of 10 times, it's a qualification problem. So while the desire is there, you can see it in their eyes. They want to get out to the next stage of the sales process. They want to be able to turn up at their meeting with their manager and talk about how they progressed this opportunity. In reality, it's fool's gold. We need to slow down, double down on the qualification, get the right stakeholders involved earlier, really bring those decision makers in particular finance. We saw one of the data points was by bringing the finance persona involved at those earlier stages rather than only presenting back the solution to them, it doubles the win rate. So, you know, teaching our sellers how they can have that conversation with the buyers. So I'd love to skip through this process with you. Unfortunately, my manager just won't let me. If you won't give me access to the finance persona, I'm really sorry, I just can't help you. It's not me, I've got this really tough manager. But we have to be strong with our sellers and help them understand how they win more. And when you show them the pictures, when you distill it down to this format that people can understand, suddenly they understand why you're telling them to qualify more. It doesn't just increase our win rate, it also, qualifying better reduces our sales cycle as well by over 20%. Okay, so these numbers are based on mid-market B2B SaaS sales processes. On average, we're seeing 91 days, but highly qualified opportunities are closing in 71 days. So understanding that, it reduces the slippage at the later stages. It's worth the effort up front. And as I mentioned earlier, only a third of deals are passing discovery with written qualification notes. This should be, this needs to be table stakes. And it doesn't have to be hard. Okay, there is AI out there, Ebster being one of them, that will automatically extract that information from your call recordings and score it for you in Salesforce. You can allow the sellers to do it themselves, but you will get different results. If your sales team is more than 20, you absolutely need a consistent approach to doing that, and you've got to lean into AI. Once again, AI is great at extracting qualification from a call recording. It's really bad at building relationships with customers. So let's get the sellers doing what they're good at and focus the AI on the stuff that they don't need to be focused on. But we've got to stop this. We've got to start having gates and triggers in our sales process that doesn't allow people to leave discovery until we captured a certain amount of key information. And what we see here is that close-won deals follow this discovery journey. Discovery starts obviously early, but it continues. And when we score discovery at every stage of the sales cycle and then beyond. And you can see here that not all parts of the discovery process are equal. Now, we've got here MedPick, but you can use any methodology you like. And what matters is that you want to see those numbers, you want to decide which parts of the qualification methodology are really important at which stage of the sales cycle. And put those gates in. Don't allow people to move past that stage unless they achieve the score. And once again, we see those top performers are disqualifying out those opportunities that are much, much earlier. And by doing that, they're not seeing that slippage at the later stages. Okay? This is the clearest graphic to explain. This is real data, and this is the clearest graphic to show that by qualifying out early, we're going to achieve much better results at the end. So a little bit about us. When we built Ebster, we started from a position of knowing that we needed to fix the data first. Our first product is what we now call relationship intelligence, and we use it to fix the dirty data in Salesforce. So we connect to things like your mailboxes, your calendars, your phone systems, and we go back through all of the historical deals that have closed won and lost in the past and make sure that all of the relationships the business has ever held are back inside Salesforce with an engagement score. We then, once we've fixed all the historical data associated to every deal closed, won, and lost, we have this new service we call RIAS. And we give you back a report. It's an audit of your whole go-to-market motion, and the first report goes back 12 months, and it gives you all the data you need as to what's going well in your go-to-market motion and what needs attention. And then we have a platform that you can use to do your pipeline inspection, run your forecasting, all inside Salesforce. So thank you so much for listening to me today. If you want to download the report and the new missing chapter, this is a brand new QR code. You're welcome to it. And obviously, I'd love to connect with you all on LinkedIn. If you mention the event today, just say Utah, and I'll connect with you as well. And I'm happy to take any questions on any of the data if there is any. Who's going to be brave?
I've got a comment, Doug.
Yes. Who are you, AJ?
You guys want me to have a mic or no big deal? We can hear you. Okay, got it. Yeah, so Guy and I have worked together on I'm AJ Guy. I've been in private equity the last 5.5 years. I've worked on 100 companies in my career, improving go-to-market. And the sales function is the most expensive function in pretty much any B2B company. Just the current state of it is outrageously terrible in most companies. Performance distribution, when you say 25% of people are making their number, it's ridiculous. Look at the bottom 50%, and you're just completely throwing money out the window on those people. So I think there are a couple steps on here. First of all, there needs to be a much stronger focus on talent. And so companies need to hire much better and evaluate their team much better. That's step one. Step two, and the problem that's always existed because data has been poor in CRM, is actually getting to root cause. Well, why are people doing so poorly? The insights that Guy is showing at Ebster can drive are extraordinary because they're actionable. They're actionable. I can roll off 7 things that we focus on at my firm to improve off of this. But it's not just that abstract. It's not just segmentation and targeting. It's not just prospecting. It's not just discovery. It's not just these things that Guy went through. But with this data, you can actually get it down to the person. And then you can actually tailor how to make them better. You can strengthen the areas that they're weak, understand where they're strong, and have that taught to other people. So this is an incredible unlock. If you have any kind of scale in your sales team, I just really encourage you to look at this more deeply.
Yeah, thank you, AJ.
Thanks, AJ.
I think in a single word, we've got another question over here. I think in a single word, it's consistency. It's not rocket science, but there aren't any shortcuts. We need to understand, we need to fix the data first, okay? We need to understand, if you've had 1,000 opportunities closed, won, and lost in the last year, we need to understand all the signals behind those 1,000 opportunities. Now, once we've done that hard work, once the data's consistent, we can understand what those top performers are doing differently within your organization. Which personas do they really need to engage with before they leave stage X? How much engagement is required with certain personas before they achieve a certain outcome? And once you've got visibility of what those top performers are doing, if you can show it to the rest of the sales team, guess what? Even though they've got an ego, and even though they want to tell you how they know it all, when you show them the data, suddenly they want to win more. That's their overarching goal. They want to keep their job. They want to win more. They want to earn more commission. And if you can show them easy ways to achieve that, they'll follow suit. Yes.
Josh Janes. I've done RevOps at Series D startups. Was at DocuSign for the COVID ride and ServiceNow. Have my own consulting firm now. I'm curious if you've overlaid on the qual side, because this is selling process, the buying process of like, are we crisp on here's the job to be done we're actually doing, here's the use case, here's why this works for you. Did that lift anything on win rates or disqualifying people faster, because this is very seller centric, and I don't like them to look at things that way.
Really, really good point. I'm not sure, I'll see if I can answer your question. Where we do really well is when we find an organization where maybe 20% of the sellers, not 20% of sales, but 20% of the people are consistently hitting quota. And then you've got this kind of long tail of underperformers. And that's great for us because we know they've got product market fit. If you don't know, if your business case isn't strong, if you're a vitamin rather than a painkiller, then you've got more fundamental issues to address. Okay, and the sellers are not going to help you do that. Hiring more sellers is not going to help you do that. Someone gave me a great, this isn't mine, I took it from someone else, but if we've got a go-to-market problem, getting more tills, more checkout spots in the supermarket isn't going to generate more revenue. Okay, if we've got a problem getting people in or getting them to buy our product, hiring more sellers isn't going to solve that problem. So you absolutely do need product market fit, and the customer is doing more and more of the buying on their own anyway. But I absolutely see that the buyer wants to have that consistent journey, and your data will tell you how to service your buyers better, because some of your sellers are doing it. And so what we need to do is help the rest of the sellers to follow suit. And it's all in the data. The answer is in your own data already. We just got to get it in the right place.
I love it. Thank you guys so much.
you.
Can we give Guy a big round of applause? That was wonderful. It was wonderful.